Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast, A Girl's Guide to the Music Business, the place where we celebrate women who work in the music industry with me, your host, Shay Green. From live events to publishing, we are giving you the ins and outs of what it's like to be a woman in music, with helpful advice given along the way. This week on How Does She Do It, we have travelled out from our usual setting again. Now we are in London, and it was really nice for us here at How Does She Do It to get out and about. Now, on this week's episode, we have Jazmin Lammy, and Jazmin works in public relations for the Noise Cartel, who are a full-service specialist rock PR agency, and they handle print, online, radio and TV promotions for a variety of artists, labels and other projects in the rock and alternative world. She also talks about her time at university and even working in music journalism. As always, I had such a wonderful time interviewing Jazmin, and as usual, please do let us know your thoughts. You can find How Does She Do It on Instagram, TikTok and YouTube at How Does She Do It Pod. Now, on with the episode. Welcome to the show, Jazmin, how are you?
I'm good, I'm cold, I'm tired, but I'm excited for this.
Yeah, good. Well, not the cold and tired part, but good to be excited. Amazing. Yeah. So, we'll start off the questions. If you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, how your journey in how the music industry started, and just bring us up to date with what you're up to now.
Sounds good. Well, I almost didn't do anything to do with music. When it came time to choosing my university courses, I'd initially picked music journalism at BIM Brighton was my first option, but then everything else was to do with performing arts. So if I didn't get into the first one, then I wouldn't have been doing anything to do with music. Thankfully I did though, so here we are. So I studied music journalism for 3 years in BIM Brighton, and it was a great course. I had some great tutors. Unfortunately, at the time, I was in like a really shitty, toxic... Can I swear in this? Really shitty... I should have asked that before. A really shitty, toxic relationship. So a lot of the opportunities I got given, I didn't take any of them, because I was flying back home to Jersey and the Channel Islands every weekend. So like those 3 years were almost a write-off. And then we eventually broke up about 3 months before I finished my course. And then I realised, what the hell am I doing with my life? Like, music, as you've seen from my house, is like the biggest part of my personality. So I was like, I gotta claw all this back. So I moved back home and I worked for a year. And there's no music scene, really. Well, there wasn't at the time. There was no music scene in Jersey. So I was like, if I'm gonna go to gigs every weekend, if I'm going to get into the industry, then I need to move to London, basically. So I saved up for a year, moved to London in January 2020. Great timing on my part. Didn't have any friends, didn't have a job lined up, just had a house to move into with people I didn't know. But thankfully, lockdown was a huge blessing for me, because it meant that obviously I was on furlough from like a retail job, so it meant that all that spare time, like a solid 3 months, was just spent interviewing bands that I was finding online, talking to people in the industry all online. I spent all my time socialising and networking and just making those contacts, so that when it eventually came time to going out into the big bad world again, I had those like locked in. So yeah, thankfully there was a lot of people that saw what I was doing, liked what I was doing. For example, there's this guy called John Jones who used to work for Duff Press, who do all the press for Guns N' Roses and Def Leppard, and he was a great help at the time, as well as Steve Marsh from Mascot Records, and on that label they have like Blackstone Cherry and Black Label Society. So people like that have been awesome for me, and they're still really good friends now, so that's how I got my foot in the door.
Nice, yeah. It's good to hear that like lockdown actually was positive for you, because for a lot of people it wasn't.
Yeah.
But I guess, yeah, in a way it gave you the opportunity to network in a way that you wouldn't have if it hadn't happened.
Yeah, like when I was working in my retail jobs, I said to them, I was like, look, if I get given the opportunity to go and review a gig or go and interview a band before a show, I need to be able to leave work at a certain time to make it. Sometimes I could do that, but it wasn't always a given. So thankfully lockdown meant that I didn't have to rely on someone else to let me do that, kind of thing. So yeah.
Yeah, cool. So after getting your foot in the door, you just bring us forward in time to what you're doing now.
Yeah, so after that, I did a unpaid internship at a company called LD Communications, who do public relations for the Brits and Reading and Leeds, and they also do Download Festival. So I managed to get an internship there just as the Download pilot was happening, so it was perfect timing. And then straight off the back of that, I went for another unpaid internship at PR, at Hold Tight PR. And they liked me so much that they just gave me a full-time job instead. So, and then I moved to the Noise Cartel earlier last year. So now I'm doing PR for Baby Metal and Avatar and Polyphia and Sabaton and The Pretty Reckless, which is insane because that's a band I've been listening to since I was a kid. And that's where I am now.
Nice. Cool, so now is going to be the time for an awkward scenario. So this is where you're going to give our listeners an awkward scenario, and at the end of the show, you'll kind of reveal all of how it was resolved. So take it away.
Good. So whilst I was with Hold Tight, I was with them for about just under a year and a half. When I was doing press at Bloodstock last year in 2022, I was the only one from the team there. So I was just doing all the press by myself. And one of the bands we looked after was a band called Ginger. And Ginger are a Ukrainian metal band. And this was happening just after all the Russia and Ukraine stuff kicked off. So, needless to say, all of the press wanted a piece of Ginger. Everyone wanted to talk to them about what was going on and what they were doing, with their music to help the whole situation and bring awareness to it kind of thing. But obviously it was still very a sore subject, so it's not exactly like they wanted to be repeating themselves and reliving everything. So we were only booking in the big dogs to talk to them, maybe 4 interviews with Hammer and Kerrang and some other places. But needless to say, everyone was emailing being oh, can I get an interview with Ginger? And I had to be no. So we get there, and Ginger, about an hour before they're due to start their press slot, they decide they want to move it to after their stage time. So I had to run around and reorganize that by myself, and no one was really using their phones, so I had to physically go and find these people in this festival site.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, the rest of it will be revealed at the end. Now we'll carry on with the questions. So we've kind of covered breaking into the world of PR, the world of journalism, but yeah, it'd be good just to know, how did you find it? Was it kind of separate avenues that you went down?
Well, when I originally moved to London, obviously I did a music journalism course, so I was mainly had my sights set on music journalism, going to shows, reviewing them, interviewing people, writing stuff, basically. However, it's become very apparent. I was writing for a lot of places, for example, Distorted Sound, Noise, Emerging Rock Bands magazine, but none of those are paid, and it is very, very difficult to make a full-time thing of music journalism. Even people I know that write for places like Metal Hammer, who are the big dogs in metal, have to do loads of other stuff on the side to pay their rent kind of thing. So it's very difficult to make a full-time thing out of it. And I have a lot of anxiety, so I was I don't think that's something I could keep doing, having to constantly chase the next job and not knowing how much I'm going to make one month to the next month. So it was the internship for LD that I was just why not, kind of thing. So I kind of fell into PR by total accident, and I'm glad I did, because I've got a lot more stability and certainty in where my next paycheck is coming from. And it also means that I still get to work with bands, different bands all the time, because they're constantly changing their touring cycles or album cycles. And it also means I constantly get to work with that band, whereas if it was with journalism, I might get to interview them one year, but then someone else might get that interview another time. So, yeah, that's how they crossed. It was an accident. This whole thing's an accident.
So with doing all the PR stuff, do you still find there's a nice balance to still do music journalism, or do you mainly focus on kind of towards the PR side of things now?
When I had a lot more free time, I was doing a lot more journalism. But since the thing with the music industry is it's not a 9-to-5 job at all. It is like constant 24/7 all the way around the world, because a band won't just have a UK team. Sometimes they'll also have like a US team and an EU team. So, you know, if I need to liaise with the US team, I'm probably going to get an email back from them at like 2:30 in the morning kind of thing. And then obviously with PR, you've got to go to festivals, you've got to go to the shows in the evening. It's never just a 9-to-5 thing. So recently I've had to cut back on a lot of my journalism just because I'm so tired. Like I'll finish a day of work and it's been like constant stress and like dealing with people that can sometimes be quite difficult. And like not all there. You get a lot of stupid questions sometimes and it's exhausting. So at the end of the day, like the last thing I want to do is keep working and it sucks though, because it was a hobby I really enjoyed, but because there's not any like payoff, like you don't get paid for it, and because I'm already working with bands as my full-time job, I don't need it as much now. So I've cut back a lot.
Yeah, I think it's a real shame with music journalism that so much of it is voluntary.
Yeah.
Because if that was like standard journalism, I feel like there'd be a lot more paid opportunities for it. But because it's music, it's a little bit more niche, and I feel like, you know, we went back to the 2000s, like magazines, like Kerrang and stuff.
Yeah.
Were huge, and there were more paid opportunities.
Yeah, I think back in the 2000s and like the 90s and going further back than that, the internet wasn't a thing. So if you were getting into new music, you had to read Kerrang. You had to listen to the radio. It was the only way you were gonna know. Whereas now, you can literally listen to a band you like on Spotify, and it's gonna offer you someone else you might also like. So there isn't as big a demand or as big an audience for a lot of these outlets as there used to be, which obviously means that there isn't as much demand for the writers and the talent, which sucks, because music journalism is really cool, really fun, and
yeah, it's just a saturated market now, isn't it?
Basically, yeah.
So this question's a little bit more of a question of curiosity than anything else, but with working in PR, do you find a lot of the artists on your roster are more male-based artists, male-based bands, and females? And like, if you do, it'd be good to know why.
Yes, is the short answer. And like, I've always, even before working in PR, like growing up, rock and metal are very much my preferred genres. And weirdly though, like I think that's what I liked about it, because growing up with my mum, she very much wanted me to be a girly girl. And evidently I am not. But like that was constantly drilled into me as a kid. So when I like discovered Guns N' Roses and Iron Maiden, I was like, that looks dangerous, that looks dirty, that's what I like, kind of thing. But that was the appeal of it for me. And I didn't realise that there weren't many females in not just the industry, but like the bands as well. I didn't realise that when I was younger, until I discovered like Joan Jett or Hailstorm and the Pretty Reckless. And even then you see a lot of the females in rock and metal also have that like edge to them as well though. So I don't think it's like necessarily, I mean obviously the whole thing with rock and metal is it's not quote unquote feminine and it's not cute and dainty. And obviously that's going to attract men because that is like the stereotype and the standard, but then you do also get women who don't fit into the cute and dainty mold, and that's what attracts them to it there. But so yeah, it is working in PR, it is a lot like male dominated bands for those reasons. I mean obviously there is a huge issue with women not being given the platform to like not necessarily like prove to everyone that they're not feminine, but that is the case a lot of the time. But I mean, but then again, like, that is what attracts me to the genre. Is I like that it's like rough around the edges.
Yeah.
And especially like seeing a woman doing that, like, that does something for me as well. So yeah, I don't know, but I like it. That is what I enjoy about it, though.
I think it's an interesting take on it. Yeah, I do like. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So, with just kind of being a woman in music in general, is there anything you feel like you've had to overcome? And if so, how did you do it? How did you overcome anything difficult?
I think, I mean, it goes back to the age-old issue of not necessarily trying to make yourself not a sexual object, because no one should have to try and do that. Like, you should still be able to be human.
Yeah.
That it sometimes involves, most people like sex. But just like kind of owning that and making sure like no one is making you not be like that and no one is making you be like that kind of thing. So there's obviously, again, with the internet and people sliding into the DMs, it's like trying to not just be taken seriously, because I don't think a woman should have to not be a sexual object to be taken seriously. I think it's more of a case of trying to keep fighting for the choice to do that. I think that's the at least from my side of things, like, that's the biggest thing. Is like, I should, because when I go and work at festivals, I like dressing up.
Yeah.
Like, like, I've got really cool, like, red snakeskin chain bikinis kind of thing, and it shouldn't matter if anyone is wearing anything like that. Like, you can still do your fucking job at the end of the day. And then even if you don't, like, that's the thing, like, there should be able to be a choice there, and for just everyone to respect that choice, I think.
Yeah, so no, I think that's, I really like that for you, because like you said, if you want to go out to a festival, work, but also feel really good in what you're wearing, you should be able to, even if it is revealing. But then equally, if someone wanted to wear something a little bit more modest, they shouldn't be made to feel like they shouldn't be modest, vice versa. I really like that take.
And it's weird as well, because when you do see just people in general in, like, on stage, for example, like, a guy can walk around on stage shirtless, a guy can walk around a festival site shirtless, and it's normal. A woman can be on stage wearing stage clothes, that's normal, but the second you're off stage, somehow that's an issue. It makes no sense at all. Yeah. So, I think it's stupid.
Yeah. I mean, some male bands do go to some interesting extremes on stage. Someone will correct me, I'm sure, watching this, but there is one band, I can't think of who they are, but they used to go out with, like, woolly warmers on, and that'd be it.
I was just going to mention this. Have you seen the Bloodstock 99 documentary on Netflix?
No.
Well, the Red Hot Chili Peppers went on stage.
That might be who I'm thinking of,
I think that's who you're thinking of, and Flea just completely performed bollocks naked, and it was flying around everywhere, and I was like, I don't know where to look.
Yeah.
But fair play, I guess.
Yeah. But, I mean, it should be equal standards for women as well.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. Yeah, equality, all the way.
Amazing. So you also mentioned earlier on about you attending BIM. Mm-hmm. So it'd be good to know, like, did you, like, obviously you've spoken of it really positively, but do you find, like, it was really beneficial? And even though you're not in journalism now, did you find the skills were really transferable?
Yeah. Obviously, being music journalism, there was a lot of writing involved, which I think helped a lot to, like, shape a particular writing style, because everyone has a different style. So it was nice to be able to kind of have my hand held whilst I found what my style was. And also, I think the biggest thing is kind of like the rules and etiquette when it comes to the music industry. Because obviously, like, when you're 18, 19 years old, you don't realise that there's so, like, strict rules on how to do things or how to interact with people, basically, and, like, certain avenues you have to go down if you want to get a certain thing. And I never realised how many areas there were in the industry. Like, for a band, it's not just the band. Like, you've got the PR, There's the journalists, there's the label, there's the managers, there's the tour managers, which are not the same things, I found out the hard way. And then you've also got like the distribution companies, copyright. I did not realise there was all of that involved. And when you work in PR, like my email threads, the amount of people I have to like CC into an email is insane. I've had to create my own spreadsheet so I know who's on what team for what band, and there are so many.
Yeah.
So that's helped a lot. I've been able to kind of like utilise that in this job as well. Yeah. There was one thing on my uni course, we did have a PR module, and it wasn't until I actually started working in PR that they were like not the same thing at all. Like during the PR module, I think I did my campaign, I did a, what's the word I'm looking for? Fictitious Iron Maiden tour campaign, and it was basically just a document of just like bullet points of what I would do, which is not the same as like what I do on a day-to-day basis in PR. So that probably could have been better. That definitely didn't help
Yeah.
with what I'm doing now, but a lot of the journalism skills I very much could easily transfer into what I do now, especially coming from a journalism point of view as well. When I'm pitching out bands to journalists, like I know what they need to know, like all the information they need to have to be able to like make a decision or like sway their decision to cover a certain band. So it's been nice to do it that way round. So I know how to get in their heads now.
Yeah. You know how to like angle it in.
Yeah.
Nice. Cool. So it'd be great to know like any highlights of any work that you've done in journalism or PR, either one.
Journalism, my first ever interview whilst I was still at BIM was with the drummer of Blackstone Cherry, John Fred, who was a band I'd been listening to since I was a kid. So that, for me, that was a huge interview, let alone a first interview. And with journalism as well, like I've interviewed Cannibal Corpse, which was really cool. I've interviewed the drummer of Shinedown, which was really cool. My favourite one has been with the guitarist of Hailstorm, Joe Hottinger. For anyone watching this that does know me, I'm a massive Hailstorm fan. So that was really cool. But on the PR side of things, doing a album campaign for the Pretty Reckless's most recent album was really surreal, and doing press for their tour. Because again, like these are bands I'd been listening to or discovering like when Scuzz and Kerrang TV was still around. So, oh my god, that makes me sound so old. Oh no, I'm getting to that age. So like that's been really cool. It's just been really surreal working with, especially growing up in a place like Jersey where it's so small and like the UK seems so far away and like not a lot of things are the same. Like I had no idea that I could actually do this. It felt very out of reach, I guess. So the fact that I've managed to do it and seem to be doing it quite well is quite insane. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I guess, especially with interviewing those kinds of bands, even when you were still at BIM, helped build a network around people. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Because now, I saw Blackstone Cherry again really recently. And like they remembered me, and that was really cool. And it was like a really heartwarming moment. The first time I interviewed Blackstone Cherry, I was in a really, really shitty place. Like, I had no idea what was going on with my life or the relationship I was in. So the fact that I'd met them again, like, 6 years later, and I'm in a much better place, I've got my dream job, I'm like, nailing it.
Nice full circle moment.
Yeah, it made me feel like really good about myself and like where I am and that I am exactly where I want to be, and it does feel like I belong here because it's like the biggest part of my personality is my music tastes. So the fact that I work in it full time now is so cool.
So it'd be great to know as well, any advice you have for our listeners out there wanting to break into the music industry?
The biggest thing about the music industry, annoyingly for someone who suffers from anxiety, is socialising and networking. It is literally all about who you know. Because I would not have gotten any of the opportunities I've gotten so far if it weren't for the people that believed in me that were already in the industry. And like, it goes such a long way to be kind and to make a really good impression, because people are always going to remember you. It's insane how small the music industry is. It wasn't until I got into it that I realized just how like close knit everything is, and that everyone knows everything about everyone, and like things people have done kind of thing. So if you get the opportunity to go and meet people and talk to people, even if you don't know who they are, they could be someone, even if it's not like a band member. It could be the manager of a band, or a label manager, or a PR, or a journalist, or whatever. Yeah, so it is literally just about that, because like they're gonna know. And like, even if you don't know what section of the industry you want to go into yet, like I'm constantly trying to introduce my friends who are in bands to people that I know, because you just never know whether it's like a support slot you want to get, or like a record deal. You just have to talk to absolutely everyone and anyone, and just treat everyone exactly the same, because it will work out.
Yeah, I think that is a very common theme of advice, is networking.
Yeah.
I think it's just one of those industries that relies on it.
I know, and I hate it, because my anxiety is just always playing up.
Yeah.
And like, I have a very small like social interaction level recently, especially like after everything that happened whilst I was at uni. So I put a lot of pressure on myself to talk to as many people as I can in like the short space of time that I have to feel like it. And it gets overwhelming quite a lot sometimes. But thankfully, a lot of the like younger industry coming up, thankfully like mental health is taken a lot more seriously now. So again, there's like other people I know in the industry that could easily, tell me to grow up and get my shit together, but they don't. Like, they agree that like therapy is a huge help, especially in this industry, especially as like a lot of things are changing now as well. Like, it is so important to have like the support for everyone, especially with people like coming into the industry and trying to make a change, trying to make a difference.
Yeah, nice, amazing. Now, I'm going to give you the question and reveal the question that our previous interviewee would have written. Where is it? There it is. So, the question is, and nice little drum roll, what for you is the thing that will mean you have made it?
Ooh, good question, that one.
Yeah.
I think for me, the thing that will mean that I've made it is like being a lot more confident in myself in the job that I'm in. I've still only been in this industry for about 2 years now, and obviously I've changed job in that time, and it's still very much a case of there's still so many people I need to get to know, there's still so many bands I want to work with. So I think when I finally get to the point of me being content and comfortable, then I'd be like, yeah, I did a good job.
Nice. Yeah, nice, I like that answer. Cool, so if you would not mind writing the next question for our next interviewee, it could be any question that you would like.
Right, that's all I could come up with on the spot.
Great, so we will tuck that question away, and then all will be revealed in the next interview.
Stay tuned.
Yeah. Now, it'd be great to get the awkward scenario answer, so if you just kind of bring us back into the story and just tell us how you resolved it.
So I was working with a Ukrainian band called Ginger last year, so obviously everyone wanted a piece of them, and they wanted to move their press time to after their set. So I had to run around an entire festival site physically trying to find the people from Metal Hammer and Kerrang that were supposed to be interviewing them, so I could rearrange all of their press, on top of doing other bands' press at the same time as well, might I add. But I managed to do it, but not only that, but because everyone wanted a piece of them, I suggested to the tour manager, we should not do this in the press tent, we should probably do this in their backstage dressing room, where it's, not full of people that want to talk to them. And he was like, no, we're going to do it in the press tent. And I was like, I think that's a bad idea, but okay. So they did it in the press tent, and of course, exactly as I predicted, the second Tatiana, the front woman of Ginger, was finished up with Kerrang, the entire press tent descended on her like a plague of locusts, and she had to be escorted out so that no one could harass her, basically. But I mean, I managed to do it. Thankfully, I'd already had enough rapport and a relationship with the people I was running around after, and because they were such a high demand band, like, they were happy to make it work. So yeah. I did that.
Nice. I guess it was having like that resilience and kind of putting your foot down and being like, no, this is what's going to happen.
I think as well, because at this point I'd let Hold Tight know that I was going to be moving jobs, and this was going to be one of the last things I did for that job, and it was the first time I'd done something like that by myself. I was like, right, I have to nail this, not just for myself, but for the team at Hold Tight as well, who were absolutely amazing to me in my first year and a half in the industry. So it was resilience. It was like, I'm gonna do this, not just for me, but for you.
Yeah.
So one of those.
Great awkward scenario answers. Thanks. That now just brings us towards the end of the show.
Lovely.
So, thanks so much for joining. Thanks so much for answering the questions, and it's just been really nice to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been nice to talk about my experience.
Yeah.
Be on the other end of an interview.
Yeah, amazing.
We have now reached the end of our show. Thank you all for watching and listening. Do make sure you come back for the rest of the episodes, a new one dropping every other week. We'd love to know your thoughts and feelings about today's discussion. You can find How Does She Do It on Instagram, TikTok and YouTube at How Does She Do It Pod. Let's all celebrate the great women shaping the music business. From us here at How Does She Do It, see you soon for another exciting episode.